What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
The name Langston Hughes is quite famous and known far and wide, even by those who may not be familiar with his writings. But who was he? Langston Hughes was an African-American man born in 1902, and although Hughes did not come from a nuclear family, his grandmother, named Mary Larry Langston, made sure that he was well taken care of and educated. Although he grew up with little money, his family was rich in historical stories, rooted in social activism and racial pride. Mary Larry Langston was the daughter of a freed slave and immersed herself in political activism, which is how she met both men that she later married. Her first husband's name was Lewis Larry, and her second husband's name was Charles Langston, and they were both extremely devoted to social activism. Larry died for social activism in support of an attempt to begin a revolt against slavery, and Charles Langston was a prominent leader in the abolitionist movement. So as we can see, Langston Hughes' family has a very strong background in being vocal advocates for equality, and we can see that influence come to life in his literature. Hughes lived in a time before the emergence of the civil rights movement, a world where society subscribed to discriminatory regulations such as the Jim Crow law. Hughes was not only a brilliant author and poet, but was also a social activist who used his gift in writing to bravely and boldly challenge racist ideologies. In this video, we will be examining two poems by Langston Hughes. The first poem is called Let America Be America Again, written in 1935, and the second is titled Harlem, written in 1951. Though these poems were written almost 20 years apart, they both preach the same message. These are just two of many works of literature by Langston Hughes that delineates the experience of being Black in America. A man named James Treslow Adams defined the American dream as a social order in which anybody shall be able to fully attain to which they are innately capable, and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of the fortuitous circumstances of birth or position. This idea was conceived in 1931, but funnily enough, the Civil Rights Act did not even pass until 1964, which, by the way, was a mere 3 years before Langston Hughes passed away. The prevalence of institutionalized racism in the 1900s inevitably posed an obstacle that interfered with an African American obtaining the dream that America had promised. They were not recognized by others for what they are. So, how long can a person endure the inequities that impede their dreams? Langston Hughes explored that question in his poem titled Harlem. He pondered whether the delay in achieving that dream would discourage people and silence them, or if it will instead build up so much frustration that it will eventually explode and motivate people to fight for their dreams. Though this poem is short, it gives insight to the frustrations behind an African American's deferred dream. Next, we look at his poem, Let America Be America Again. Langston Hughes defined a few traits associated with the American dreams, such as how America is perceived as a land where opportunity is real and life is free, and that equality is in the air we breathe. But in the next lines, he challenged the validity of that vision by stating that there has never been equality for him, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. His words begs the question, how can an African American acquire freedom and hope in a nation that sees them as separate but equal? So, as Langston Hughes said, America never was America to me. James Tristell Adams' vision of the American dream was near impossible for an African American to attain because they did not live in an indiscriminate society. Hughes, as well as many others, recognized that, including a friend of Langston Hughes named Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He so wisely preached, "I look forward confidently to the day when all who work for a living will be one with no thought to their separateness. This will be the day when we bring into full realization the American dream, a dream yet unfulfilled."
There is another America. This other America has a daily ugliness about it that constantly transforms.
Although Langston Hughes' poignant writing inspired and resonated with many, there were some who disagreed with his writing. For example, we have a literary critic named Tom Hansen, and he saw disunity in Hughes' poem titled Harlem. He criticized the structure of the poem as conflicted and disorganized, but he later pointed out that he believed the poem was a calculated failure that mirrors the continuing failure of America integrating Black and white people. Next, we have an African American author named James Baldwin. He criticized Hughes' writing in an article that the New York Times published in 1959. He stated that every time he reads Langston Hughes, he's amazed by his gifts and depressed that he has done so little with them. Baldwin felt that Hughes didn't properly represent the complexities of a Black person and only wrote about the struggles that they faced. But Hughes wanted to capture the entire Black experience and saw the inclusion of their stripes as necessary to his writings, and many people in the Black community agreed. Despite any criticism of Langston Hughes, he was widely acclaimed for his inspirational work. He showed the world love, and they loved him right back. He was the first African American to make a living solely off of his writing. His literary contributions were an embodiment of his love and pride of being unapologetically Black. In the raw words of Langston Hughes, a poet is a human being. Each human being must live within his time, with and for his people. Therefore, how can a poet keep out of politics? Hang yourself, poet, in your own words. Otherwise, you are dead.
Look at what they did to my